Hey guys, Eric here with 4Up Gaming, and today I want to talk about part 2 of getting started with Kings of War. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you've watched part 1 of getting started with Kings of War, and maybe you're at the point now where, okay, I've played some games, I've used the cardboard cutouts, I've used the free rules. At this point, I haven't spent any money on it, on the game at all, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the rules, I'm enjoying the streamlined way of playing this game. It's ranks and flanks, and the rules are very easy to learn, difficult to master is kind of the old saying with them. And I really am enjoying the streamlined rules. That's awesome. So next step is going to be, maybe you want to buy some models. Maybe you want to start spending a little bit of money on the hobby. Ultimately, that's what we're going to have to do, right? Ultimately, we can do this as cheaply as possible, but we are eventually going to have to start spending a little bit of money on the hobby itself. For a couple different reasons. One, unfortunately, money makes the world go round, and if we're not giving any money back to Mantic, who makes the game, then unfortunately the game's probably not going to be around for very long. So they're a business, they're in to make money just like any other business, and even though they are willing to put out free rules, and even though there are ways to play this game for free or for a very limited cost, eventually we are going to have to put some money towards it. So if you're ready to put some money towards the game, the best place to start is ManticGames.com. Guys, I'm going to tell you again, I do not work for Mantic. I do not get any kickbacks from Mantic at all. I'm just a fan of the game. I'm a fan of the hobby. I'm a fan even of the business model that they have. So I'm just a huge fan of theirs. And look, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't always have to buy everything Mantic, and sometimes you can't, right? So, for example, if you're ready to get into the game, and let's say you've been looking at some of these armies online, and you see an army like the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood is one of my favorite armies. Unfortunately, Mantic does not make any models for the Brotherhood yet. Yeah, you can use some Basilean models, you can do this, do that, but when I think of Brotherhood, I think of old Bretonnians from Warhammer Fantasy Battles. That's what I got started with, and that's who I think of. So I'll tell you right now, you don't have to use exclusive Mantic models playing this game. They even endorse that in their rules, which is one of the coolest things about Mantic. They understand that they don't make all the models out there for all these different armies. I think right now they're up to 22, somewhere between 22 and 26 different armies that are included in the Kings of War rules, and there's no way at this point that they make enough models to support all of those armies. So they know that people are not going to be buying just from them. Anyway, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox there for a second, but yeah, you're going to want to start looking at models, all right? Here are a couple different alternatives. I talked about some of them in part 1. Fireforge Games, they are a great alternative if you're looking at doing a human-based army such as I got that on the mind now, such as the Brotherhood. They're going to be called something different in 3rd edition, I don't quite remember. But it's definitely something to look at or to look into. They do that like the Brotherhood or even Kingdoms of Men or some of these other human-based armies. Or if you're going to use a unit that you want to look a little bit more feudal or Teutonic, they do a lot of more medieval styling in their armies. So that's definitely something to think about. The other good resource that I like to use and that James also on the channel that he uses a lot of is eBay. There are a lot of people that are constantly getting out of the hobby, not necessarily Kings of War. Most of it has to do with Warhammer, and they're getting out of the hobby. Unfortunately, they spend thousands of dollars on these beautiful models, and guess what? There's no game system that they can use it in, or that they know that they can use it in. Even ask James on the channel. He has gotten several armies from eBay that have been fully done, fully painted, modeled, based, ready to go. and all he has to do is put them on a movement tray. Yeah, they might cost a couple $100, but they're already ready to go. So definitely check out eBay. I'll try and put some links in there for eBay, but eBay is a great alternative. If you want out of print models, or if you are looking for certain types of models that you can't seem to find on Mantic or even Games Workshop, you might be able to find them on eBay. Now, some of them are going to be at a discount, but some of them that are out of print, people might be charging a little bit more. So it's something to think about. Another alternative is going to be Amazon.com. Amazon does have some great deals, but watch out with Amazon. There are times when I get on there, and depending on the availability of items, sometimes they're going to charge you more than Mantic or than other websites. So make sure that you are checking, comparing these totals and comparing the cost, because you might find a box of ogres on Amazon for 35, almost 40 bucks, maybe even 42 or $45. I've actually seen them more expensive on Amazon than on Mantic Games themselves. So it's definitely something to consider. Now, just so you guys are aware, Mantic Games is based in Great Britain. They're based overseas. So some of their stuff might take a little bit longer to get to you than you're used to. Depends on what type of shipping you do and stuff like that. So keep that in mind. Just a little sidebar there. Amazon is obviously going to be quicker, but they might charge you more for shipping unless you do Amazon Prime or get a discount on shipping with them. All right. So that's step number one. Start looking at models. Step number two. At this point, if you've been using the free rules and really you like the way the rules are, you're in luck. 3rd edition is coming up soon. As of the filming of this video, it is October 7th, and the rules are going to be released October 21st. I do not know if they're going to be pushing free rules from 3rd edition out right away, or if they're expecting you guys to buy some of the rules first, and maybe like a month or two lag time, they'll start putting the free rules out online. But either way, you don't have to necessarily go and buy the rules right this second. If you want to, though, I'm sure you can get some great deals on 2nd edition, on a 2nd edition rule book. There might not be much of a point to it, though, unless you really want to get that 2nd edition rule book just to kind of delve deeper into the rules. I've heard that the rules are not really changing that much, which is good for all of us, because let's be honest here, having to learn a brand new game mechanic, brand new game system is never good, it's never fun, and it's never easy, right? It usually takes a little bit of growing pains and stuff like that. So from what I've seen so far with the battle reports and just from some of the other videos on Mastercrafted or even on Countercharge and the podcasts or on the Facebook page, a lot of the changes are they're good, they're needed, but they're more tweaks. They're not overhauls or anything like that, so which is good. But I would definitely wait if I were you. Save the money, buy the 3rd edition rulebook. Now, I'll tell you right now, I don't know how long the special edition 3rd edition rulebook is going to be on their website or how long they're going to sell it for. They might stop selling it here pretty soon. So something to think about. All right. Next up, you guys have probably been playing on a regular kitchen table, right? You guys have probably been playing on the floor even. Some place to where you can at least get movement down, you can have as a makeshift battlefield. But let's say you're ready to go to a full-on actual tabletop, a full-size 6 foot by 4 foot tabletop. How do you do that? I've seen some people on YouTube and other people that say, go ahead, just custom make one. Well, yeah, that's great. I would love to custom make one. We used to play on a custom board all the time. And while that's fun and it's awesome, not a lot of us have the space to have a dedicated 6 foot by 4 foot area in our house just to have a game board. So I'm going to show you guys some alternatives for that here in just a second. Okay guys, so if you're like me, space is definitely an issue. Maybe you live in an apartment, or maybe you live in a smaller house, or maybe you just don't have the space to be able to dedicate to a full-size game board, just like me. So I'm going to show you guys a couple alternatives. The first one here is from urbanmats.com. This is awesome. This is a fold-up table. As you can see, it looks almost like an old camping table, right? Like those chintzy ones that you used to get and set up and they wobble around. This is mostly aluminum, so it's light. This is not very heavy at all, which is nice. These panels, it breaks down pretty much into, I would say, I think it's 4 feet by 2 feet wide. and it's not very thick at all, as you guys can see. This is awesome because once you're done with your game, you fold the table back up, you can put it in a closet, you can put it under the stairs, in a storage area, and it really does not take up very much room at all. And as far as setup goes, it's quite simple. All you're going to do is you're going to just unlatch the little safety latches that are down here on the bottom. Sometimes this one gets a little stuck. There we go. And you just lay it on his side. Hopefully you guys can see this well. And from here, you just start unfolding it. So folds out just like that. So now from here, you just keep taking it, unfolding it. It looks just like a camping chair because I think that's actually where they got the inspiration from. Yes, that was kind of loud, but I'll tell you right now, I've used this thing for a couple of years and it's actually worked out pretty well. And then what you do is you're just going to take all the little legs off of here. The legs pop up, as you can see. Just make sure it's secure. Legs go on like this. There are 6 different legs. Go ahead and get it set up, which I'm gonna probably have to fast forward this one just so you guys can see it, but it is pretty quick. All right guys, so as you can see, here it is completely unfolded. I'll tell you right now, it's sturdy enough for a game. I wouldn't be wanting to try and lay on this. You wouldn't want to put too heavy of stuff on this. This is like a camping table in a lot of ways where you know, it can support some weight, but it's still mostly meant for modularity. It's not meant for strength. However, I'll tell you guys, I've had this now for a couple of years. Use it quite frequently. It's great because I can take it over to Tom's. In fact, this is the game board that you guys have seen a lot recently if you watch some of our battle reports. And it works great. I mean, it hasn't fallen apart. I've had no issues with it. So while it might seem a little bit wobbly, it might seem a little bit chintzy and maybe not quite up to the price, I'll tell you right now, this thing is awesome and it's great. It is definitely a great way to have a battlefield ready to go. At this point, this is 6 foot by 4 foot. All you do is you just roll your battle mat out on top and you're good to go. So, and I'll show you guys that maybe in another video, what it looks like though being all set up. You can see the height difference though. This goes pretty much to my waist. I'm 5'7", so it's a good distance. My buddy Tom, who's like 6'7", has some problems with it. He has to lean over a little bit in order to get it to work. But for the rest of us that are not giants like him, this one actually works out pretty well. This table works pretty well, and we enjoy it. So this is definitely a good, one of the best alternatives, especially if you're limited by space. Now the price, it is a little pricey. This game board is going for around 200 bucks. I'll get the exact price and I'll put it on the video later, and I'll attach a link to Urban Mats as well. But this is an awesome alternative. They do have some deals on Urban Mats, at least when I bought this, where they will cover the shipping depending on how much money you are spending, which is, again, is awesome. A couple of things about this table: it's easier to set up if you have 2 people. It's difficult kind of if you're by yourself, just because getting it set up in the last stage of getting it up on its feet can be a little challenging. So but this is definitely a really good alternative to building your own custom table. Again, I can take this down pretty quick. It only takes maybe 2 minutes to set up, if even like a minute, depending on if you have help. And again, takedown is pretty quick. So definitely something to think about if you're in the market for, and you're looking for getting a modular table. You're not worried about having to do a custom build. Okay guys, so another alternative. Let's say you don't want to spend the money on the other modular game board. Completely understand that. The other alternative is going to be this big boy right here. So what I did, went to Home Depot and I bought 2 4 foot by 4 foot pieces of plywood, and then put them together. This is a very easy, cost-effective way. Now, at the time, I was living in an apartment, so this was the most feasible way to do it. And all I did, I don't know if you guys can see on there, this right here, this is just, it's called a piano hinge. But what I did is I put this together. It took me about a half an hour, I guess, mostly because I just had to make sure everything was lined up right. But all it really costs is it's one piano hinge and 2 pieces of 4 foot by 4 foot plywood. And then pretty much what you do is you can place this on any playing surface or any flat surface, even if it's not the right size. I'll tell you guys right now, when I first used this, I actually put it on my kitchen island, and then I used 2-inch by 2-inch spacers that were wrapped in a foam just so I didn't scratch anything to go under this board and brace it. And again, the whole setup maybe cost me 50 bucks. Most of the expensive part was the wood. But what you pretty much have, ooh, hopefully I don't take out the camera. What you pretty much have when this is completely flat is an 8-foot surface that you can use as your gaming table. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why do we need an 8-foot playing surface for a 6-foot by 4-foot game? Well, it's nice to have a little bit of room on the edges of the playing surface, and so this provided, you know, 2 extra feet of room on the playing surface, so that way you could put your drinks, you could put models that you weren't using, models that had been lost, models that were casualties, whatever it is, you could put them on that playing surface, and it was out of the way off the game board. Now I'll tell you right now, this one is cheaper than the modular game board, but this does require that you have another table in order to set it on, unless you just want to set this on the ground. This was an awesome alternative. It's cheap, cost effective, and it gets the job done. It does take up a lot of space while it's folded out. And I'll tell you right now what I used one of those $30 foldable kind of all-purpose plastic and metal tables, and I'll provide a link to something similar through Amazon or eBay or one of those. I'll provide a link so you guys can see what we're talking about here. But I just put this down right on top of it, and it works pretty well. The piano hinge is very unnoticeable. That's why I used a piano hinge. It makes the piece go pretty flat. You do have to use something to support the 2 sides of the board underneath the board onto the table. But other than that, it is a great alternative. It's cheap, and it gets the job done. So the last thing I want to talk about in part 2 has to do with painting the models, or at least starting to assemble the models. So I'm going to talk about a couple little tricks, little things that made it easier. And most of the stuff I might save for part 3, but I'll try and talk about a good part of it now. So like I said, the next thing is obviously painting, going over your models. So once you have bought your models, let's see if I can find some that are actually on a sprue here, unless I've already clipped them all. I have. So the models are typically going to come on a sprue that looks something like this. All the models are going to be kept suspended in all these little plastic pieces. You're going to want to make sure that you have a good set of pliers or cutters to be able to cut them out. But this is also the color, if you guys can see it, this is also the color of what the models are going to look like when they first come out of the box. So typically directly from the box right to here, this is what they're going to look like. Now from here, you can do this one of 2 ways. I've seen it done both ways. I've done it both ways, and either way works just fine. There are people that will take them off of here and they will put them together. They will assemble them as such, and then they will paint them from there. So for example, here is a Warhammer. Ooh, it got really light, really gets weird when I do that. So this is this is an old Seaguard. Ooh, that was weird. This is an old Seaguard elf model, high elf model from Games Workshop. I assembled it, and then what I did is I rattle canned it, or I spray painted it with a white primer. That's why it looks like that. As far as white primers go, you have a couple of different options here. You can always get them from Games Workshop. Games Workshop's a little bit expensive in my mind, in my case. So a cheaper alternative is going to be, sorry while I mess around with the camera here for a minute. Cheaper alternative is going to be Army Painter. Army Painter is a cheap, really good alternative. Now this can right here is Primer Matte White. This is still $10. Typically it's $10.99. I think I got it for a couple dollars off. But yeah, this is $10. Still not totally cheap, right? Well, I'll tell you right now, guys. As much as I enjoy Army Painter stuff and it does look good, I also like to use this stuff right here. Rust-Oleum 2x primer, paint and primer. You want to make sure that you get the one that says also bonds to plastic, because most of these models are going to be plastic. This stuff is about $3 or $4 here in Colorado. I don't know where it is. Could be different throughout the rest of the country or the world. But here at least, you go to your local Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, any of those places, and they're going to have this Rust-Oleum. Rust-Oleum has a bunch of different colors too, whereas with Army Painter, Games Workshop, you're limited to probably around, I'd say 10 or so, which is still a good amount of colors, but the Rust-Oleum stuff is a lot cheaper, and it works great. I haven't seen much of a difference other than you don't need as much of this as you do this. So this, you really got to be careful, make sure you're not lathering it on there. This stuff works out a lot better. And I feel that it works better in a lot of ways. So that's what I've primed a lot of my models with. I know I didn't prime very good because these ones I started painting these several years ago. But a lot of these models have been primed with the Rust-Oleum, and I'll tell you what, I can't tell a difference, especially when I'm painting on it. As long as you get a good primer coat, there is no difference, right? So some cheap alternatives there. You don't need to use Army Painter even, or Games Workshop stuff. So as far as gluing everything together, I know you can get PVA glue, you can get any type of glue, rubber cement, you can use regular old super glue, anything that you like, use it. And they all range in different prices. I'm sure if you get the Army Painter one, it's going to be definitely a certain price. It might be a little more expensive. Games Workshop has their own, which is going to be more expensive. This is the stuff that I like to use. It's the Gorilla Super Glue Gel. I like to use the gel because when you're trying to glue things together, sometimes if you use the real runny regular super glue, it just you dot the piece of plastic that you're trying to glue together, and it completely just runs away from what you're trying to glue together. So the gel will actually, you can see it, it'll hold right where it's supposed to be, and you can just, from there you can put stuff together. I've also found the Gorilla Glue makes really good glue. So anyway, this stuff is a lot cheaper and I prefer to use it. Again, with the gel, I feel like the gel just seems to hold better when you're initially putting the models together, especially when you have two really weird pieces of plastic and you're just trying to fit ever so slightly. If you're pouring super glue on it, sometimes the glue will run, and it always runs the wrong way, right? The gel will not run, it'll hold pretty well, and typically you need less of this than you do your regular PVA glue or your super glue. The other nice thing about this works great with pewter and with heavier models. This works really good with. This tends to hold a lot better than your regular super glue. And like I said, this is a lot cheaper. And Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, any of your hardware stores will have this stuff, and it works great. As far as paint goes, though, I'll tell you right now, everybody makes paint now. Reaper has their own paint. This is P3. This is from Privateer Press. Privateer Press makes pretty good paint. For some reason, I enjoy using their paint for my bases. So, for example, like my base here, before I painted it, and before I did resin, when I would just have regular bases, I would love to use this stuff. This stuff seemed to work really good. It has a really good earth tone to it. Now that I do resin and actually do like an actual base design, I don't use it as much anymore. But it's not quite as expensive as Games Workshop. Games Workshop paints, in my mind, have gotten worse over the last couple of years. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the containers. The older containers didn't seem to dry out as quickly. Here in Colorado, we have an issue with all of our paints drying out pretty quick. And these containers, that's the problem. You might spend, and these are also expensive too. These are sometimes $4 or $5 a paint pot. Which is absolutely stupid. And yeah, they're good colors. You don't need to dilute them at all. They work great. I'm not trying to bash Games Workshop, but these containers seem to dry out here in our climate that we have. The favorite paint that I like is going to be Army Painter. Again, I don't work for Army Painter. I'm just telling you, they do make some really good paints. What's nice about this paint is that you can manipulate this a little bit better than you can in Games Workshop. If you do want to water this down, or you do want to mix these paints, you can definitely do that. The other nice thing too is with this different top that's on here, it's a screw-on cap. This paint will stay a lot longer than this paint, or even the Privateer Press paint will. Also, I have some of these paint pot caps will get stuck just because so much paint, you're using it as a paint pot, you're dipping your paintbrush in there. You might get a little bit of paint around the edges, and then that just acts as glue later on when you close it, and it just seals it up. I have that issue a lot with the Privateer Press paint. Some of these I have to damn near rip the cap off just to get back into them, and I don't like doing that because these are not cheap either. I mean, these are a little bit cheaper than Games Workshop, but these are still not cheap. Whereas with the Army Painter ones, I've had no issues. You just unscrew them off like you do anything else. And the nice thing about this is you can control how much paint you want to use. You just daub out 1 or 2 little dabs and you're good to go. So this is definitely something that I like to use. I like to use the Army Painter paints. Plus, I can also take this and I can mix. If I want to do a dab of this and then add a wash directly into it, I just dab the wash in. I'm not trying to use these paint pots and pour stuff out, making a mess everywhere and wasting a bunch of money. These are a lot more precise, especially when you're mixing stuff. So a lot easier. And these are also cheaper. These are typically way cheaper than Games Workshop paints. I don't quite know about the Privateer Press paints though. I know a lot of people like Vallejo paint. Whatever paint you want to use, as long as you get something that is meant to go on models, meant to go on these types of models. So Vallejo paint, Reaper has their own paint, Army Painter, Privateer Press, a lot of these that are made for actual models is a good type of paint. Don't pick up some weird random paint that nobody's heard of, because before you know it, it's going to make the model look like crap and you may not be able to get it off of there. Also, I would stick with mostly water-based paints. Oil-based paints are nice. They really have a good texture, but it's really hard to clean up after. You have to use paint thinner and all that kind of stuff. If you're already a professional painter and you've been doing the hobby for a while and you know how to do that stuff, awesome. But if you're just getting started out, which is what these videos are for, I would definitely stick with a water-based paint, something like this. It's easy to clean up. This stuff is made for models. You know it's going to work. You're not going to have any issues with it. So this is definitely the way to go with paint. Either way, guys, when it comes to painting something, I will always tell you less is always more. Start out with less paint than more, and try it to see how it looks first. I unfortunately am one of those people, just like many of us, that we get started painting and then we get discouraged by the way that it looks. Guys, painting is a skill. It is something that is developed over time. Yes, I know that there is talent out there and that people are just painting and talented at painting and stuff, but most of us are not. It's a skill. It's a learned skill, and as you learn little tricks and you start painting more and more, they do get better over time. So just stick with it, and don't get discouraged if it doesn't come out quite the way you want it to look the first time. The beautiful thing about these models is that usually you can, if you don't like it, start over. Prime them again, or dip them in some Goo Gone or something that'll take the paint off, not destroy your model though, and then just start from scratch. Paint them again. Who cares? It's not a big deal. It's your model. You want to put something good on the battlefield that looks good. But definitely painting, you know, if you've gotten to the point where you've bought models and you want to go forward, then I would definitely, you know, think about throwing some paint on there. There are some cheaper alternatives though, but definitely a good way to get started. Like I was talking about earlier, and I think I kind of jumped ahead of myself. What a lot of people also like to do is prime the sprues and then paint directly on the sprue. And I've done that before. I like it. It's actually a nice way to do it. Like I said, this is directly on the sprue. I just painted them while they're on the sprue, and then I click them off, you know, or cut them off, put them together, and at least it saves me a step. The nice thing about doing it this way is that you get full coverage on all your models and all the parts of the models, whereas if you are putting the model together like this, you might have some areas where it's difficult to get into with a paintbrush. You know, you might have some really tight crevices and stuff where it's very difficult to get into with the paintbrush. Whereas when they're on the sprue still, you have access to so much of the model. This is a little bit more way of getting precise and putting stuff on there and precise. And I find that this way you might save a little bit of time and paint, because you're painting all of it at once. So for example, if you pick out, you know, I'm going to paint everything that needs to be painted brown, I'm going to paint that first. So I just went through and I painted all the bows and all the quills and anything wood. I painted it all first while it was still on the sprue, and it saved me a little bit of time from having to go from each model and go, okay, brown, boom, 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 brown, boom, boom, boom. So it's a little bit easier and quicker this way as well. I hope that this video has helped. I'm going to try and get another part 3 out soon. Just kind of going over maybe some of the basics when it comes to the game, you know, kind of movement and stuff, and showing on an actual tabletop what some of that might look like. I may go into a little bit more terrain and stuff like that. If you guys like this, you like the content, you like what's in here, please let me know. You know, subscribe, leave a comment. Just let me know, hey, this is good stuff and that it's working out. I feel, just like I did in the last video, that there really are not a lot of good resources out there for people that are just getting into the hobby, and that's sad, because Kings of War and other tabletop games, not just Kings of War, but Kings of War is such a great game, and there's a great community around the game itself, and I don't want people to feel like outsiders looking in. I don't want people to feel that, oh, well, you know, there's way too much that's in the way of me playing this. There's really not. Kings of War, like I said, if you haven't watched part 1, watch part 1. You can get started playing Kings of War for next to no money at all. So there's not this huge monetary you know, need that's needed to be put down first. You don't need to spend a lot of money to get into this game. That's one of the beauties of this game. And if you have other models that you feel can work, use them. That's the other beautiful thing about Kings of War, is that Mantic understands that they do not make all the models for all their different armies. So bring other models from other game systems. As long as they look cool, you know, it goes with the whole, the rule of cool in this game. And so as long as it looks cool, you know, your people across the other side of the table, your opponent, they're going to love it. As long as it looks cool and it fits, at least fits the base size for what it's supposed to be representing, they're gonna love it. And that's another beautiful thing about the game. So so yeah, please leave a comment. Let me know if you liked it or not. Also let me know if there's something that you'd like me to talk about in regards to getting into the game. Like I said, you know, this game is a lot of fun to get into, and I want to try and break down some of those barriers that new gamers have when it comes to getting started with this game, because the barriers really are not there. They're mostly mental, and they're because this information and information like this is not readily available like it should be. And so people don't know how easy it is to actually get started with this war game. And so I want to spread that information. I want to take you know, all the stuff that I've learned, all the stuff that all of us at 4Up Gaming and that other gamers have learned, all the little tricks and easier ways of doing things. I want to take all that information, put it together, and make it easier for people that are just starting out in the hobby, make it easier for them to get started. I want to try and get more people into the game, you know, really show people how easy it is to get involved with the game and how easy it is to pick it up and start playing, because it really is pretty easy. And if there's any tricks or anything like that that I can show you guys, I want to try and do that. So if you guys have any other questions or anything like that, or even questions about what I've shown, you know, questions about painting, questions about the game boards, questions about anything like that, please let me know. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. We're going to hopefully get a battle report out. Probably won't be in 2nd edition, and we'll probably have to wait until 3rd edition, and give us a couple weeks after, because we're going to really want to sit down and digest all the new rules and how the rules have been changed and tweaked, and then we'll try and get a battle report out soon. I'm going to try and do hopefully another episode of getting started, like a part 3. So please let me know what you guys would like to see in that. And then also, we're going to try and start up our podcast again. We do a podcast through YouTube. We don't do it through iTunes, unfortunately. We're not there yet. We might try and get another episode. We only have 2 episodes out of those. We might try and get our podcast going again. So please let me know if you guys like this type of stuff. And again, leave a comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. All right. So otherwise, until then, I'll see you guys next time.